every week, somebody on our team spending time with the bank because they want to know how's your projects coming. Now we have massive lines of credit that allow us to do very large projects. Get this stuff, get it together, be ready, because the time to borrow money is when you don't need the money. Learning to budget, when I fully embraced it, it literally changed my life. You guys have to learn the job costs, which will help you estimate accurately. And then it leads to something that's beautiful.
Job costing is so important, guys, because if you do not know what your costs are plus your overhead, then you don't know that you're selling the job to make any money. So you don't want to just keep doing projects one after the other and never make any money.
Good morning, everyone. You have Matt Adkins with my lovely bride, Reta. So what's up, Reta?
Hey there.
Thanks for joining us on the Green Pro to CEO podcast today. You've got some gold for us today. You got some nuggets that I am so excited to share with our audience and fellow contractors and fellow tradesmen that I think will help them. This episode is about getting stuff done. This episode is about all the practical things that we have to be intentional about in our business, and some of the things that most guys, that blue collar guys that like to work with their hands, we're typically not great at, right? So this episode is what did we decide to title it? Know your numbers?
Know your numbers.
Know your numbers. That probably scared everybody that's listening to this episode right now. If you've been in the trades a long time, know your numbers means a lot of different things. And you've got 20 years of experience in the trades, in the back office, understanding books, understanding scalability, how to set all these systems and processes up. And if anybody, so tell us a little bit about that. If anybody knows what happens in a small trade-based business, service-based business on the back end, you know, right? So tell us a little bit about your history, how you got here. You started right out of, well, not even done with your undergraduate, and you found yourself in the trades.
Yeah, so I had big plans. I was in accounting. My goal was to be a CPA, work in a big firm. And somewhere along the way, I was almost done, and I started working for a small business in Albuquerque and in the trades. And I guess right at the end, like I was working under the CPA, that we had several different clients, and this one company I ended up deciding to stay with because I don't know, there was something about the trades. So I did.
Let's stop right there real fast. So to kind of recap, you were in a graduate program, a combined MBA program, and part of that program you had to go into the field. So you got
Yes, I had to work under a CPA for 2 years.
So you were you were going through that process.
Yes, I was at the end of that process.
And your job, tell us a little bit about that. So a lot of funny things happen at CPA firms that we've learned over the years, but a lot of times the person whose name's on the door is not necessarily the person doing all the work in the background.
No, that's where people at that time like me were doing a lot of the work. So
you were going out to these clients.
Yes.
You were visiting their offices. You were working with their in-house teams to gather data, get files, receipts, all that kind of stuff.
And then doing all the entry for all of it, whether it's like credit cards, bank statements, you're doing all the work for to do the P&Ls and the balance sheets for the customer to get ready for their tax return, pretty much.
This was a grind every single day.
Every day, yes.
And I got to see part of that because I had, as I mentioned earlier, Reta is my wife. So I was in my own career. I was doing my own thing. I'd already graduated undergrad and was in the pharmaceutical industry. You were trying to finish up your MBA, doing those things. And I got to watch that because I can still remember the dreams that we had. You had all the big firms picked out, and they were already trying to recruit you. You had great grades and your work ethic.
I worked really, really hard for it. Yeah.
Yeah, you worked hard and people recognize that. So there was zero doubt that I had a sugar mama. I had a whole game plan. You were going to make all this money. You were going to be join on these big firms. You were going to be a partner at some point. Like we had a dream.
Yeah.
Then you got into the mix of it and you started working in these small service-based businesses as their financial person, if you will, on behalf of the CPA firm that you were working for.
Yeah. And I was into the day-to-day activities where you're in their processes, you're learning their people, you're learning how they handle their people and their customers.
Sure.
So it's at a whole different level than just at the top doing taxes and guiding them with numbers. So I liked that part. I liked the part of working with the people and helping them solve problems.
So a lot of accountants, and we have one, right? We believe, and we're going to talk a little bit about this further in this episode, a financial team
absolutely
is more than a single person. It's more than an accountant. It's more than a bookkeeper. It's more than a money person. It's a team. It actually, that team grows as your revenue scales.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, most of the time, this is not a single person that is responsible for moving this business by looking for trends in the data and things like that. But you got into it and you realized really quickly you were not necessarily passionate, although you were knowledgeable, you weren't necessarily passionate about understanding the exact steps of P&Ls. You didn't want to be and I hope I don't offend any accountants out there because I love you. I really do.
And you need us.
And we need you. But you recognized quickly you didn't want to be a cubicle type, just in the books kind of accountant. You wanted to be a bigger part of the business that understood all these things, could build a team that could put those processes into place. But you recognize that with the type of knowledge you were gaining and experience you were gaining, that you could do so much more for a small business.
Yes. And I think at the time when you're going through school and sitting down and talking to the CPA, like at the firms and stuff, you don't really grasp that there's so much more that you can do on a financial team other than taxes and budgeting and there's so much more out there you can do with your knowledge and help change a business.
Sure. And so just to get back to that, so you were going out to these clients, you had working on behalf of the CPA firm, and one of them happened to be a small service-based business. It was an artificial turf company. Mm-hmm. It was a startup. And there were I remember this just like it was yesterday, because this artificial turf company screwed up my whole plan. Right? It took us on a journey because they had this really neat culture that you fell in love with. It was very, very similar to home, right? Yes. Remember, we grew up in small town West Texas. Shout out to Sweetwater, Texas, home of the world's largest rattlesnake roundup. But we had chosen we wanted to see the world. We wanted to experience other things. So when I got the opportunity to leave and join a pharmaceutical company in what we felt was a huge town, a huge city like Albuquerque, New Mexico, a population roughly 1 million people. Mm-hmm. Where we grew up, population 10,000 people. So
big difference.
Like big difference, right? Like Matt and Reta were going to the city. But when you found these people and you knew you could help them, mm-hmm. everything changed.
Yes. And I wanted to be a part of their team. I wanted to be a part of their story. Like they had great vision, great people. They cared so deeply about their people. And I mean, that's really who we've always been too. So it aligned.
It aligned.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go through that journey. So you were able to work with them side by side. There came a point where the business was growing, changing. The owners had decided that they wanted to bring some of the services that you were representing via the CPA firm. They wanted to bring those things in-house.
Yes.
So they had the ability to discuss every day, maneuver, like do all the things that we now are learning in our own business is super, super powerful.
Yes.
So long story short, everybody loves Reta. They found a way to make it happen. You became a part of their team, and you were part of that team in various capacities for how many years?
I think it was probably 13, 14, maybe 15 years.
And you learned that business. So you had this like solid foundation of accounting principles, understood these things. But that time in that business taught you some real life lessons.
So much more than just accounting. And to watch how that business grew from such a small business to such a large business. And going through that process, you get to do everything. You start out doing everything. And
Right.
I mean, anywhere from, it's just.
So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
You went from
orders
order
to
processing,
accounting to payables to AR to insurance to goodness, what other like phone systems and, just random stuff to then you start as they got bigger dialing in, then you'd hire another person to, take a piece off of you. And so and then you get better in that designated area. So then you work on your processes and, just trying to get better every day. And it really helped you understand just how business grows.
Sure. So looking back, you've been in our businesses for 4 or 5 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, would you do that again? Do you think that has helped you?
Yes.
Did it give you a big enough return? Because there were some real sacrifices, right? We gave up some major dreams for you to be a part of that process and that organization. We didn't get to where we wanted to get, maybe as a family financially, as fast as we wanted to. I'll tell you how I feel about it after I hear how you feel about it. So the question is, would you do that again? Would you tell your best friend or your sister or somebody, yeah, go do that?
Actually, I would tell them.
Okay.
Because I think at the end of the day, it really matters what you're looking for.
Sure.
But for me and our family, I think it was good because not only, I just learned so much. And then when we did venture off and start our own business, I had already done it. I already had that knowledge because I think, and even in the trades, if you get that experience behind you before you start your own business, I think it just propels you faster because you've already been there. You know what to look for. And I think if I would have just come straight out of college and decided to start my own business, it would have looked a lot different.
So we went really slow at first to go really fast now.
Yes, because we could speed the process up because we already knew what to look for.
That 10, 12, 14, however many years, I'm not the accountant, obviously. However many years you were in that process, that was a tuition of its own.
Yes.
That was an education that you were never going to get in a classroom. Probably
100%.
never get if you chose to join a large firm and be stuck in a skyscraper with 200 other accountants in cubicles. You probably were never going to get that real world experience.
And never have that interaction with people, never learn that piece. And I think that's a very important piece in building business is you've got to understand people and be able to talk to people and be able to move as a team. Because if you can just do the numbers, like, and do that one piece, like, then, and that's all you do. Like when you come into small business, you can't really, like, there's got to be some growth there to be able to communicate with the rest of your team. And in construction and trades, it's a different mentality about the numbers anyway.
Right. And that's going to bring us right into the message we're trying to get across. So we've had the ability to, and been very blessed in our journey to build multiple 6, 7, 8-figure trades businesses, service-based businesses. By all means, in most standards, we've been very successful at what we've done. And to us, there's always some grind. There's always a hard part, but to us, it's actually pretty simple, right? Because for our team, it's always just a process.
Right.
Once you learn the process, you run the process, you adjust this business. You might take this step out and move it over here. This might look a little
It's that
bit
puzzle piece,
but it's still a puzzle. At the end of the day, it's not overwhelming. It's like, okay, here's what we got to have. Boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
I think what happens in the trades, and I want your opinion here. I feel there's this broken record when what I like to call the 2 men in a truck. Typically, this is a trades-based or service-based business that is run by a technician, a guy that's very, very good at what he does, right? He was a carpenter. He was a cabinet builder. He was whatever. Typically, those guys, those businesses are $1 million or less in gross revenue. And they have very little help. They typically have this distorted view of financials and money. Mm-hmm. My experience has been, as we have worked over the last 18 months, 2 years to try to acquire service-based businesses to grow our own brands. What I have learned is most of these guys are looking at financials as I see my accountant one time a year. I drop off a box of receipts and he tells me how much money I have to spend before the year's over, or I pay in taxes. So I go to lunch with my accountant in November and he calls me on the first week of December and says, you're going to owe $80,000 and go buy a new truck. Like, that's it. That is typically, I think, for a vast majority, I would say 70 to 80% of small service-based businesses, that's the process for them knowing their numbers. That's it. Mm-hmm. He'll call and say, yeah, you made money. Great. But it's all after the fact.
Right. And if you're waiting until 3 to 4 weeks before the year end, like, there's not a ton. I mean, you can change some stuff, but there's not, you can only change things so much.
So if you're sitting here with, and we are, right? All of our listeners out there, we hope you're getting value out of this. This is what I want you to hear. Rita, if you can give them some advice, what are a few things that you would encourage them to do today? We understand that not everybody's in a position they're going to be able to run out and hire somebody to do these things, right? But the processes, whether you're learning to do them yourself or you're hiring somebody to set those up and do them for you because you simply don't have the capacity or don't understand, I think they have to be done. And the longer you wait, the more painful it is, right?
And set that up. And because if you don't do that, I mean, you better do it as soon as you can, because you don't know enough. I mean, you don't know that you're even selling the project at the right price if you don't know your numbers. So it's important that you do it as soon as possible. Even like you said, even if you can't hire somebody right out the gate, you need to get people as soon as you can in your court to work on that or work a little more in that area so that you can build it to the point where you can pull those people onto your business.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So a few areas that we had made some notes before we jumped on that, because the world of know your numbers is so big.
Mhm.
We could run 20 episodes and probably not cover them all. But a few things that the small tradesmen should get to learning right now, learning some processes and building some SOPs for. One of those, like, you believe every contractor should job cost.
Absolutely. Job costing is so important, guys, because if you do not know what your costs are plus your overhead, then you don't know that you're selling the job to make any money. So you don't want to just keep doing projects one after the other and never make any money.
So let's talk a little bit about, like, what is job costing? Some of these guys have no idea what that means.
So every expense, every cost of goods goes towards one of your projects. So if you're working on a project, you collect all your expenses, all your cost of goods, and then
Guys, this is everything.
yes, everything.
Right? This is everything from your fuel. Like, if I fill up my truck that morning to go work on customer XYZ's house, that fuel receipt goes to customer XYZ.
Yes, meals.
If I have to go to lunch that day and my company provides food for me,
like
that
per diem
expense goes to that thing.
Yes.
Any of the job materials, any of those things go to that cost.
And even to the point of, like, the little things that you take out of your inventory. Say you have a pallet of concrete, like, and you only took 10 bags for a project. Those 10 bags need to be accounted for.
Absolutely. I think that's easy for people. I think they're like, yeah, I could do that. I think where people miss the most is that's not all the expenses.
No, then you have your overhead.
Overhead. That's the elephant in the room. Nobody understands overhead. What does overhead mean?
So overhead is, what does it take to keep your lights on? Like, everything that is required to turn your lights on in your building and run the business, that is overhead. Payroll, insurance.
No matter what, if I don't sell anything today, at the end of the month, I have to have $5,000 to be able to try it again.
Exactly. That is your overhead.
Okay.
Yep.
So, and we can provide them some sheets. We'll get this up on, we'll put an Instagram link out there on our profile that you'll be able to visit, and we'll drop some of these things in there. You can always get to Reta. You can always get to I as in Matt. It's kind of weird. You get me. You can get to us, and we will help you. We are building a tool chest of things we want to give to you guys for free. But overhead is such a big deal because contractors today, they'll go out and say, they sold a project for $5,000. And when you ask them how much money they made, they will say, I made $5,000.
Right.
Which the best contractors, if they're making 20% net, that means you cleared, that is your money, then, or the company's money, if you will, on a $5,000 deal. If you are an absolute stud, you made $1,000.
Right.
Right. You didn't make $5,000, but people cash flow. And so they're always looking for that next job, and they think that's it. I think that you need to understand that every single job has to have X amount of dollars built into it that go to the monthly nut, is what we call it, right? That number. Our payroll is right at $1 million a year today for our landscaping business, right? So we're looking $80,000 to $90,000 a month just for payroll. So we know every single job has, we now know we're averaging 50 jobs a month. So we know every job we're taking X amount of dollars away to cover things like payroll, insurance, the trucks, the everything, right? I think guys miss that all the time. I don't think they understand overhead. I don't think they understand how to figure out overhead. We don't have enough time today to go through that, but we can help you figure that out.
For sure.
What else? So it's kind of funny how it all works, right? So Reta says in your business, you have to job cost, which leads to our next know your number. We have to adequately and correctly estimate.
Yes, because that's how you can back into to make sure you are estimating properly.
The job costing.
Yes, because if you don't job cost
first, then
you don't know. Yeah, you don't know your. I mean, you kind of do that. You do that up front, right? Like when you're doing an estimate for a customer, you look at what you think are your costs and you apply your overhead. You estimate the project and then you give the customer. But it's important to job cost because that is your actual data. So the salesman may have thought, like, these are my only job costs. But then what you find out later from the production team is actually you missed this amount of materials that was needed. So that's how you fix your process
and we see this
and your
lot.
estimator.
We see this a lot with salesmen. You underestimate how long it takes to do that job.
Yes. And that way it helps you set your mins and your maxes because otherwise you don't know if you don't pull your actuals. Because, I mean, the actuals tell the real story.
So job costing, and you guys are going to work through this and understand everything comes together. It's a big old cycle. It's an engine, but you have to have all the parts. So we're job costing. We're quasi job costing upfront before we ever build an estimate because we're calling around. We're getting cost of materials. I think it's going to take me 5 guys in 4 days. We're putting all those numbers in. We're making an estimate. We're sending it out. The customer says, yeah, let's do it. I go build it. Then I come back and I've captured all my real data.
Yes.
And then I compare it to, well, this is what I thought when I pre-job costed, pre-construction. Then I made my estimate and I need to run my business on a 20% net margin. And when this is done, I only made 4%.
Right.
So now we get to figure out why. Well, I thought those boulders were going to cost me $1,000 and they cost me $7,000. I thought we were going to do this job in 2 days. We're 4 guys and it took me 6 guys in 2 weeks. And now you can catch the trends in your estimators, or if you're estimating yourself, it's easy to adjust. So the next one you get better, then the next one you get better.
And it is a process. Like, I mean, after
how often
a couple
do you do this with your team?
The job costing, we do it daily. We job cost every project. We work on this every day. I mean, we're purchasing materials. Those costs are immediately applied to projects. And then every month we sit down as a team and we collect this data and we see, how did we trend? And as long as we are within what we estimated, like, we keep rolling. But if we start seeing a trend where, that doesn't look right, we can take it back. We talk to the production team, we talk to the sales team, and we get whatever we need to adjusted.
So today, like, it's so important that you actually have an in-house controller. Like,
yes.
Literally all he does is sit there every day and look at, are we what we're actually doing in line with the numbers we projected?
Right.
And that person drives the rest of us crazy. Right. But it's so important.
But with that person, that's how you know that your sales are aligning with what, your goals are. Because without that, like, you're just kind of guessing. You can't actually guide your business.
So we have our job costs. Now we're learning how to estimate correctly. And once you start doing those, the estimating becomes easy, right? It's not
so easy.
We're not calling all these suppliers every day. It is, now we're so good at it. We're checking quarterly, right? And
you still have people in the background. We're doing it monthly.
Yeah, but us salespeople, we like to jump in there every now and then and be like, let me make sure they're doing their job. But y'all are doing it daily.
Yeah.
But we can produce estimates so fast. We can bid $1 million projects in an hour.
Yes, absolutely. And it took you, if we think about it, it took us maybe a year to really iron that out. And then now, like, I mean, it's not hardly any work to do those
Yeah,
things.
because we just
Like
put in the
it's a
work. We
process.
did a little bit every single day,
Right. And
and we
yeah.
stayed at it. So you guys have to learn the job cost, which will help you estimate accurately. And then it leads to something that's beautiful. So every single contractor I know has gone through this stage where and you learned this early on in the career we talked about before, where you stay up at night not knowing if you have enough money,
Yes.
not knowing, can I make payroll? Right. And so sometimes you had to write checks, very large checks, and you knew what was in the bank account, and there was not money to pay it. Mm-hmm. We are faith people. We believe God always provides. And when you're working in his will and doing the right things, then whatever it is because that's the plan. He always provided. You would write checks that as an accountant, it was like, this is not right. Yeah. But you got direction from ownership, like, we believe it's all going to work. And it did. Mm-hmm. But by job costing and accurately estimating, now you're able to do something it's a superpower. Enough people don't spend time on it. So my contractor buddies, my audience, people that are listening to us today, this is the part you're going to get really good at. It's going to change your life. Budgeting. Yes. Those things lead to you accurately and easily being able to pull together a budget.
Yes. And then you do it like you do it a month, and then it grows to the year. And at that point, when you're able to do monthly every month for the year, and then you can start to forecast the next year, because then, guys, you've learned your trends. You've learned the way your sales go. You've learned how your production team goes. You can then understand your rates on production rates and salesmen. And there's so much data you can learn by capturing this and watching it. And in a lot of service businesses, lots of them can be seasonal. I mean, you have your ebb and flows, ups and downs. I mean, in ours, we face the weather, and you need to be prepared that if you have a quarter or two that your guys can't work, or, I don't know, maybe
production rates just slowed by 40%.
It just slows down. You know that you're prepared for that, and you know how to get through that.
It's changed our lives.
Absolutely. And you can sleep so much better, even though you know that, oh no, we're financing this for a while, or it's on lines of credit. You actually can sleep better at night knowing that, you've done all this work, your forecasts have worked in the past, and you can sleep, and come, when that turn comes, then you're going to know that everything's in line.
Sure. So for me as an owner, and I was 100% a technician, right? I love to build. I think I'm a better operator than most of you guys. I think that I can build as good as anybody. But I had to learn to be a CEO. I had to learn to be a businessman, because at the end of the day, I couldn't do this for the rest of my life, right? My body physically, I'm an older man. Now there's young bucks that swing a hammer twice as fast and twice as hard as I can today. And so my job changed. Learning to budget, when I fully embraced it, it literally changed my life, because I could come to you and say, Reta, next year, I want to add these services, and I need this many men. I need this much marketing dollars to be able to get the business off the ground. I need this kind of equipment. And you would go back to the team, come back next week at our owners meeting and go, cool, here's your numbers. And I would be like, sometimes it was like, okay, Matt is a genius. He hit a home run. We found another $750,000 in revenue. And then sometimes, which we never made these announcements, it was like, that was not a good idea, because I had real numbers. Right. But tradesmen, we like to just wing it. So you've worked with a lot of us. It's pretty common, isn't it, that people just start doing stuff because of shiny objects? And once
you start doing construction, I mean, I get it, because once you're building something, like to build the next thing, sometimes
It seems like
it's not a big deal. But then it's all the equipment that needs to be purchased and all the people that need, there's so much more to it than just building this one thing. So, and make money at it. You can always build something, but the goal is to make it profitable.
and the stress is gone.
Right.
When you get good at budgeting, what I've learned, and you guys have helped so much with this, is allowing me to put things in the budget that I'm passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, Matt, I have noticed that you love personal development. It's really important. You're going to randomly hook up with someone and say, I want to fly out and I want to go do a podcast with this guy because he's going to help us spread our message. And instead of surprising the team or stressing the business with an increase in expenses and all these things, we sat down and said, cool, how much money do you want to be able to do that every year? And you don't even have to ask about it, because if you guys don't know, I have no money. I have no checkbook. I have no debit card. Mama has taken it all. But it's allowed me to have that freedom because something pops up and I can go, oh, hey, I want to go do that. And there's no stress because you had already built it in for the year.
Right. And once it's built in, especially if you can sit down with your team guys and like in your owners meetings, like what do they want for the year? Like if you ask some of those type of questions, like when you're pre-planning for the next year, you know how to build that budget. And you can always take from that budget if you need to, from those
Move it
funds,
around, right?
Move it around, change it, which we do that, where we'll come up with something in the middle of the year and we want to change. But there's money allocated somewhere. So you can always change what you're looking at, but there's always money designated in places.
Sure. So we've decided that everybody should job cost. Everybody should learn to accurately estimate. And if you job cost, you will accurately estimate. And then now we can budget. And that brings us to Q4 of every year. That brings us to November and December every year. We now want to build our forecast for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they all this goes hand in hand. And if I've learned anything, sharing this data with your team, your leadership team, and going through this process with them, super powerful. We get more buy-in, people understand the vision, and it's not always about just generating more revenue.
Right.
It's about getting everybody moving in the same direction. So now we get to go, here's our budget. Here's what sales would have to do to support this budget. Let's find the holes.
Yes. And that's a big thing on our team.
We love to do that.
We like to look for the holes. We like to look for the next challenge, and we call them holes. And sometimes I think that like gets everybody pretty tensed up. Like there's like this massive problem, sure. But to us, it's an opportunity to make something better.
Yeah. So we do look at all the things we do really, really well, mm-hmm. But just our culture, especially at the very top, we're problem solvers. So yes. We look for things, inefficiencies. We look for all these things. But if you're job costing, you're accurately estimating, you're running budgets, getting to build a forecast for the following year, it's just a combination of spreadsheets. All the data is already there. It's not overwhelming. I used to sit down early in my business and take 2 days and write up this big old plan, and it was all emotional. There was no data behind it. I'd be like, oh, this year we did 4 million. Next year we're going to do 5. How?
Exactly.
And then we'd get to the end of the year, like, did we get there or not? So we used to do all these things. I would get in my little thing. I'd make this big old PowerPoint presentation, and I'd call everybody in first week of January and say, we're going to have our annual planning meeting. Super boring. Nobody cared. But we had all the homies together. We got to eat. We got to be together, but we got better. Now we have a destination meeting, right? And we have that meeting before we ever break for the year at Christmas, because Now what we're doing is we're sitting everybody down and saying, we're not planning anything. We're telling you where we're going.
Mhm.
You don't get on an airplane. Andrew Ammons, a buddy of mine out here in West Texas, roofer guy, could be a model, super handsome. Andrew's he's a numbers dude, right? And we went through some masterminds together. We were in some various things together. He taught me this. He said, Matt, you don't get on an airplane without knowing where you're going. So we changed. I changed my mindset, and I changed that event for us for our destination meeting. I'm the pilot, baby. I'm telling you where we're going. Here's where we're going in 2024. And that's been really, really powerful.
And it's really exciting for the team because they're breaking for Christmas. They're going to go have a great time with their families. And then when they get back, they know where we're going.
Yep. I love it. So to wrap up here, a couple things. These guys listening to this are probably going, oh, I hate numbers. But we all need money. Right. Mm-hmm. And you will get to a point in your business, if you're not there today, that you will not be able to self-fund growth. You will have to learn to work with bankers, investors, things like this to grow your business. If that's the path you're on, how has having all this data easily accessible, nice and neat, packaged up in a little pretty bow, how has that helped you in your own experience going to banks and lenders? And not only how has it helped you, what has the response been when you're like, oh yeah, here it is? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
So first thing, I think it shocks a lot of people when you have it all together, especially when you're in construction, because they're expecting like not a lot of data and they're taking a bet on you. And so, but if you present that and you give them everything that they're needing and turn it around that quick, they know they're dealing with somebody that, has their stuff together to where they feel more confident in lending you that money.
Okay. I agree 100%. I can still remember the day I went in there. So I was a salesman by trade, right? Like I had a lot of very high, intense sales training early on in my career. I was in the pharmaceutical industry. I went door to door. That's what I did. So I can still remember being at the point where I couldn't fund some of our projects anymore. Mm-hmm. And I got suited up. Boy, I had my pitch ready. You gave me a manila folder with all of our financials. And I went and sat down with the banker in our local small town. He knew me. And he said, okay, great. This looks good. How much money do you need? And I said, I was waiting for this moment, right? And I'm sitting there stoic. And I said, I need to borrow $50,000. He gets super quiet, kind of chuckles, and looks at me and goes, you need $500,000. And I said, okay. And the rest is history. We learned to leverage some debt to build our business. But now we have massive lines of credit that allow us to do very large projects. But every week you are spending time with somebody on our team, spending time with the bank because they want to know, how's your projects coming? What's those things? And our process is so clean. We're just pushing buttons and printing reports and emailing them over, right?
Yes. It's a very quick process.
No stress.
They can ask us for something and the data's already there. We've already done the work. You push the button, you send it over. And I think that's really helped us because they appreciate that they're not having to pull teeth from us to get data to be able to feel like they can loan us more money.
Sure.
It's really built the relationship.
Sure. And I think it's really powerful, guys. Get this stuff, get it together, be ready, because the time to borrow money is when you don't need the money. So go ahead and do that now. To wrap this thing up, what are you saying to our listeners? That guy that's sitting in his truck right now, he doesn't know if he's made money or not yet. What are some words of encouragement? What are you saying to him or her that you believe will make an impact? What are you saying to that guy that's out here by his own, that doesn't have a Reta, that doesn't have a CFO, that doesn't have a financial team? What are a few simple steps he can take today just to get started?
To get started, I would say, for the time being, start the little stuff, start that job costing, start spending a little more time doing your actuals, and just work there first, and then build your sales process, and just take it slow and build until you can afford a team behind you to be able to do that. But it won't take, if you put that hard work in at the very beginning,
Sure.
it's not going to take months and months and months to be able to probably afford that person, because that person they're going to make you money. So I would encourage them to don't think of that accounting person sitting in the back as, just putting in receipts, as just this expense, because they can help you make money too.
I 100% agree. We're going to wrap up. To our audience, we thank you guys so much. We're so glad you're here. Our partners in the trades, we're here. We want to help you. The world's changing on all of us, and the only way we get through all of this is together. So stay tuned. Go hit like, subscribe, do all the stuff that helps us spread the word. We appreciate you. See you next time.
Bye, guys.